Welcome back to Viking Guitar University. I'm Viking Guitar, and this video has some supplemental exercises for our second instructional video. The focus of that video was alternate picking, and these exercises are going to further develop your alternate picking by throwing you a few curveballs. One thing I'd like to mention, as you're doing alternate picking, or really as you're picking in general, if you take a look at my right hand here, if I'm picking on the low string, my hand is kind of at this area. If I pick up at the next string, I don't have to move it too much. But as I move up towards the other strings, you don't want to still have your hand rooted in that same position, because then you're dealing with a different picking angle, that versus that, and it's just weird for your hand. As you move across the strings, you want to have your hand still touching the strings here at the palm, so you're muting the strings that you don't want to have ring out, but you want to kind of move it up so that whenever you pick, or wherever you're picking, it's kind of a similar angle with your hand. You see, as I'm up here, it's all kind of the same angle. You don't want to be rotating the wrist and then picking at that new angle, because it feels weird and it's going to train your hand to be strange. It's better to keep it at one angle and then move it so you're ingraining that muscle memory the whole time. So really quickly, take a look as I play this pattern, and I'm just moving across the strings here. What my left hand is doing isn't really too important. Just pay attention to how my right hand glides across the strings. It moves across like that. Anyway, without further ado, download the tabs. The link is in the description of this video. We're going to jump right into exercise 1. Exercise 1 is a variation of that A minor pentatonic shape that we've been playing around with and I haven't explained yet. I will explain it, don't worry, but for right now we're just using it as a vehicle for these other practices. So, if you look at the tab, what we're doing is, instead of just doing a straight ascending and descending pattern like we did in the exercise in the last video, we're breaking it into chunks with these little repetitious bits. Now, the whole thing up to speed kind of sounds like this. So all that is we're doing 3 strings, then we're jumping back one and doing those last 2 again, then doing it all over, all the way up. So the first chunk looks like this. Now pay attention to the strict down, up, down, up, down, up alternate picking, and let's do it again. For the second part, we move the pattern back down to the last string. We go up 3 strings and then repeat the last 2 bits again, like this. Same thing with the next one. Move down a string, up 3, and then repeat the last 2. And for the last bit, same thing, just finish it off. I like ending on that root note because it makes it sound complete. So the whole thing at a slow speed looks like this. Pay attention to what my left hand is doing as well as the picking I'm using. Once again, at a faster pace, it looks like this. Getting this practice of doing 2 notes per string, or 2 picks per string, and changing is good, because there's a lot of riffs that sound really cool when you can do that, but it's a tricky thing to do, especially if you're jumping back and forth across the strings a lot. So developing this skill and practicing riffs like this helps lock that in, and it's something that you can use later to make even cooler sounding riffs. So break this down, do it slow, keep it even. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And when you're ready to, we can move on to exercise 2. Exercise 2 is the logical continuation of exercise 1. It's the same pentatonic shape, except instead of doing it ascending, we're doing pretty much the same pattern, descending. We're going to do 3 strings, move back 1 and do the last 2 again, and then just move it all down. So up to speed, it sounds like this. So let's break it down into small portions here. This is the first part, played slowly. Pay attention to the picking as well as what my left hand is doing. We're following a strict down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. The second part. The third part. And the last part. Keep it slow, make sure that each note is ringing out, it's being fretted properly, you're picking it properly, that the spacing between each note is even. Whatever speed you need to do that at is just fine, as long as you're ingraining good muscle memory. Here's the whole thing at a slow pace. That is exercise 2. Now for the next 2, we're going to be doing something entirely different. This is exercise 3. Both exercise 3 and 4 are heavily influenced by the guitar teachings of a man named Paul Gilbert. If you don't know who Paul Gilbert is, he's someone worth looking into. The man is a wizard at guitar, and he's an incredible teacher. One of the main things that he likes to teach about is alternate picking. And what he's isolated is the biggest obstacle that most people have with alternate picking is when they switch strings. It's easy enough to sit on one string and just go back and forth all day and do whatever you want with your hand, you know. But as soon as you start incorporating another string in there, there's movement involved, it gets tricky, and that's usually where people trip up. So what he has devised is a series of exercises that kind of help train you to not have a problem with that. What I'm about to show you, it's not necessarily the exact notes he's teaching, but it's very, very influenced by Paul Gilbert. After watching these exercises, if you want more of this type of stuff, search for Paul Gilbert, alternate picking, or Paul Gilbert instructional videos, and you'll find a bunch of stuff to help you down this path. So for right now, exercise 3 starts up at the 7th fret of the D string. Download the tab, look at what it's doing, and then watch how I play it, and we're going to take it very slow. The whole point of this is that it's training you to do the string skip without any hesitation and without screwing up your rhythm. So you need to start this at a slow pace and make sure it gets solid before you start to speed it up. Here's what it looks like. Now you'll notice that I'm doing 3 notes on one string, so it's a down pick, an up pick, a down pick. And then I'm moving up to the G string and hitting an up pick. And then I'm moving back down to the D string and doing a down, an up, and then it cycles through again. This is tough to do because you want to be focusing on muting the strings that are ringing out at the same point, so it's not and sound all crummy. Keep it slow, make sure it sounds good at a steady pace, and then slowly speed it up. And when I mean slowly speed it up, I mean, practice it for however long you can, stop. Pick it up the next day, practice it again at the same pace. Once it starts getting really boring, speed it up a bit. If you're noticing it's getting sloppy, scale back on the speed. And it will really help your playing, especially when you get into more complex lead playing later on down the road. So I'm going to start it slow, and I'm going to speed it up to not a point where it's sloppy, hopefully, but to a point where you can kind of see how this ends up being a really cool sounding soloing technique. Another thing about this one is that it's important to play it without distortion. Obviously, I'm playing with distortion right now. Distortion, in my opinion, makes things sound really cool, but it also kind of masks any inconsistencies you have. When you get a chance, unplug your guitar, play it clean. See if it still sounds clean and all the notes are ringing out when you're playing without distortion, without amplification, and then you'll know you'll actually be getting better at the riff. If you're playing it through an amp and it sounds great, and then you unplug it and you play it and it sounds like crap, that means you got to slow it down and start over again. Like such. So this riff is great because it focuses on skipping from one string to the next and back. That's fine and good, but it wouldn't be anything without being able to go both directions. So that brings us right to exercise 4. Exercise 4 is more of the same. A little different because we're going to start on this one. If you look at the tab, you've probably already seen this. It's going to be one note on a string, 3 notes on the next string, 1 note on the next string, back down the 3, and starting back at the very beginning. The other thing about this is it starts on an up pick. Then it does down, up, down on the next string. Then an up pick, back to a down, up, down, and then an up pick. It's a great skill. It'll really help you get your string skipping down, but once again, if you start it too fast or if it's sloppy and you just lock it in when it's sloppy, it'll be no benefit to you. Cutting corners doesn't work with guitar. So let's take a look at it very slowly. Pay attention to what my left hand is doing, what my picking pattern is, and where the string skipping is. Also pay attention to how my hand moves across the strings here if I'm going up. Remember to start on the up pick for that first note. And the reason we're doing that is because when we do the 3 notes on the other string, it makes it down, up, down, which is what we're used to. If this is getting too easy for you, switch the picking pattern around so you start on a down pick and then up, down, up. And then do it again with the up pick. So here it is slow. Keep it slow, keep it at a smooth speed so everything rings out, there's no messes, and slowly speed it up. So those 4 exercises give you a few more things to do with alternate picking. Once again, don't race through them. It's not about finishing them. It's about ingraining them into your practice routine, and if you find that your alternate picking is starting to suffer or that you need to develop it, go back to these, start them slow. I've been playing for 14 years, and I will still take some riff that I learned way back in the day and I thought I've mastered, and I'll just slow it down and really kind of experience the nuances with it and spend some time working over it. And by the end of doing that for a few days or across a few different practice sessions, I realize that those skills are better ingrained. Guitar is what they call a perishable skill. You can do it a whole bunch, and then if you stop for a long time, the skill starts to fade. You can't just pick it right back up. So these are good things to kind of maintain throughout your practice routine so you don't start getting rusty in areas as you're focusing on others. Be sure to tune in for the next lesson. Until then, thank you for watching. This is Viking Guitar University. I'm Viking Guitar, and keep the world metal.